Hi, you're listening to the Stefan Livera podcast focused on Bitcoin and Austrian economics. Today, we've got an episode about managing your Lightning node, but first, a word for the sponsors of the show. So firstly, check out Kraken, one of the world's biggest and longest standing Bitcoin exchanges. They've made a range of high quality hires, and just recently, Kraken have acquired Circle Trade, one of the most recognized OTC desks. So this will provide new trading partners around the world, particularly in Asia, deeper liquidity and tighter spreads. So don't forget, Kraken offer 24/7 support, and they've got Kraken Pro mobile app delivering all the security and features you love about the Kraken exchange in a beautiful mobile-first design. There's Kraken margin trading up to 5 times long and short. There is Kraken futures up to 50 times leverage to benefit from price swings or to hedge your price risk. Kraken is one of the most liquid exchanges, so you've got to set up with them. Go to kraken.com to sign up. This episode is also brought to you by Unchained Capital. Unchained is a Bitcoin and technology financial services company that empowers customers with unprecedented financial freedom and control. Their products and services are built on the foundation of multi-signature, and Unchained offer a 2 of 3 keys vault, which is a great option for those thinking how best to secure their Bitcoin for the long term. And if you ever need to access liquidity without selling your Bitcoin, Unchained offer collateralized loans. So you can put up Bitcoin. All that Bitcoin is stored on-chain in dedicated multi-sig addresses. It's never rehypothecated. You can share in the security of those keys and get USD liquidity. I'm really impressed with Unchained. They offer excellent services. They've released valuable content. They've got open source tools such as Hermit and Caravan. Check out my recent interviews with Parker and with Drew from the team. I think you'll enjoy partnering with them. Go and sign up at unchained-capital.com. Have you backed up your Bitcoin seed? Look into Cypher Wheel by the company Cypher Safe. So your Bitcoin BIP39 seed, when you set up your Trezor or Ledger or Cold Card, you want to make sure you've got it in a way that's fireproof, waterproof, rust-proof, pet-proof, and tamper-evident. So the Cypher Wheel, it comes in a wheel shape. It masks the words of your seed, and you actually have to open a tamper-evident seal. So make sure you've got your seed backed up. Make sure you or your loved ones have access to your Bitcoins if an accident occurs. So this product, it's available for pre-order. Go to the website cyphersafe.io. The link is in the show notes. Last but not least, givebitcoin.io. I'm really excited about this company. It's the easiest and safest way to get your friends and family into Bitcoin. I'm sure you've seen it before. You've given Bitcoin to people and they lost it. They didn't know what they were receiving. They didn't get the education around why Bitcoin is valuable. Give Bitcoin is really cool because you can lock up that Bitcoin gift for, say, 1 to 5 years. Every month for the first year, Give Bitcoin is delivering a lesson from a world-class curriculum with input from many well-known Bitcoiners. I'm also an advisor with a small equity stake assisting with the curriculum. Just to clarify, it's not on-chain time locking. It is locked up with Prime Trust, a qualified custodian. Don't forget, you can also get Bitcoin as a present, so you can put it on your wish list so other people can give you Bitcoin at givebitcoin.io. There's a lot of exciting things coming with Give Bitcoin. Look out for them. I'll be having an interview with Corey on in the new year. So are you running a Lightning node, whether that is an LND one or a C Lightning node? This is the episode for you. So Suheb is the co-founder of RTL, Ride the Lightning, a popular Lightning dashboard. So I wanted to get Suheb on and talk about the app and how he made it and who it's made for, and just talk about some of his tips on how you can use the app to manage your Lightning node. So here is the interview. Suheb, welcome to the show.
Hey, Stefan. Thanks for having me.
So Suheb, I know you have been doing a lot of cool work on RTL, and look, I think we'd love to just hear some of your story on how you got into all this.
Sure, great. Thanks for the opportunity to tell my story. So, if you look at RTL as an app, right? In reality, it's actually in its mission, it's actually pretty simple, right? Just creating a UI layer on top of existing Lightning implementations. So, in the essence, really a simple job, right? But if you look at the implementation, it turns out to be really complex because we are trying to create a power user experience or give a power user experience, try to expose as much as we can in terms of the functionality of Lightning implementations on the UI, right? So create a user experience, UI focused. So that kind of makes it a little bit complicated in terms of all the functions that we have to handle. Try to think about what type of user experience to provide on specific functionality. So that makes it kind of complicated. So simple in mission, complicated in implementation.
Yeah, and also you participated in the Lightning Torch as well. Tell us about some of your early days experiences with Lightning Network.
Sure, yeah, that was really an exciting, experiment, and definitely, I'm actually number 50 or 51 on the Lightning Torch, so definitely that was exciting, right? So yeah, and I actually used RTL when I was, participating in the Lightning Torch. So yeah, definitely it proves first of all that Lightning works, right? And being part of that, carrying that torch and experiment and being part of that chain was really an exciting, experience and community building kind of, Lightning community building experience. So that was a great experience to be having.
Yeah, and maybe tell us a little bit about why you started RTL and when it started.
Yeah, sure. So we've been developing RTL for more than a year now. So it started with my first experiment with Lightning, kind of. So I set up my full node just after LND went on mainnet. So LND went on mainnet in I think March of 2018. And on April 2018, I had my full node up and running on Raspberry Pi. I actually used Staticus's, guide.
Raspberry Bolt, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I used his guide to set up my node. So I had some experience of working on Raspberry Pis and some Linux experience as well. So it was pretty easy for me to follow that guide and set up the node. But once I set up the node, that's when I realized that okay, I have this node up and running. Now I have to open channels. Once I've opened channels, I need to see, okay, how are my channels doing? Are my channels balanced? Am I routing anything? At any point in time when I need to log in and view the status of my node, there are at least 10, if not 10, 5 to 10 commands that I have to run to really get a good view of where my node is, right? What are the peers? What are the channels? There's so many things that you can do. And LND has actually done a very good job in terms of the different API functionality that they have provided, different commands that they have provided. You kind of gives a lot of detailed view. So it became pretty apparent to me, when I started operating the node, that I need some sort of a dashboard, right? The moment I log in, there are 10 parameters that I need to see, and I need a good view of that, right? So that kind of became, kind of a motivation to build this UI. And at that time, there was no good UI available. And we wanted the UI to have, an opinion about the type of user it should be focused on, right? So my view was that it should be a power user focused tool for especially focused on Lightning node operators and what all they need to see, right? So with that kind of user persona in mind, we started building this tool called Ride the Lightning. So yeah, and we've been on this journey for more than a year now. We had our first release in October of 2018, and it's been 40 plus releases, 40 releases. There are a couple of other things that we have done on the side. So yeah, that's kind of the way we started.
And what's in a name? Why the name Ride the Lightning?
Yeah. I'm not a Metallica fan to begin with, but interestingly, when I was before I actually started building this app, I was like reasonably active on Bitcoin Twitter, and there is one interesting Twitter account called goes by the handle Medium Squeeze, and that handle's name is Ride the Lightning. So I was very fascinated by that Twitter handle, and he's kind of a, you can call him a maximalist, I think, in his views, right? So I like his views, I like his tweets, and I liked Ride the Lightning at Medium Squeeze. I liked it a lot. So that was one good, that kind of was always there in the back of my mind, right? That account, I liked that account. And when we were thinking about naming the app, it was kind of giving you a control over Lightning, right? It is giving you how to manage your Lightning node. So we thought that Ride the Lightning is a good kind of a name for this app, which is allowing you to control the power of Lightning, empowering you, so you are able to ride the Lightning Network with with RTL. So that's how Ride the Lightning. But yeah, I hope Metallica fans are not upset with me by using this, for using this name.
No, that's great. That's awesome. And I mean, for me personally, I use RTL. I have, off the top of my head, I have at least 3 different instances of RTL running, right? I've got it on my node, I've got it on my nodal, I have it on my BTC Pay. It's used in many different software, let's call it packages or hardware packages, because it's just such an easy tool to manage your Lightning channels.
Yeah.
So I think we can maybe dive into more detail.
There's one interesting there's one interesting thing I wanted to actually tell you about Ride the Lightning name. I was actually researching that a little bit. So Ride the Lightning, even the Metallica didn't come up with this name originally. This name or the phrase was actually borrowed from a Stephen King novel. So it's an interesting kind of trivia.
There you go. Okay, well,
Yeah.
it's okay. When you're playing at a conference or something, you've got to have, like, obviously Ride the Lightning as your intro song and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. So look, let's jump into some of the high level. What's it look like when you go into the tool? Typically, users who have, let's say, BTC Pay Server or one of these other products, like say a Nodal, or I think even the new Casa node will have BTC Pay Server, and therefore that will also have RTL. So I think it's a very common package. So basically, my experience is, you have the password, you log in, and then it presents you with the home dashboard. What are we seeing on this screen?
Yeah. So if you look at the dashboard originally, there is your Lightning balance, your on-chain balance. Lightning balance is essentially the amount of funds that you have logged into your channels, and it actually is giving you your incoming side of it. The liquidity on your side. So that is one view, and then second is if you have any on-chain balance, you get one view of that. You get a view of how many channels are active, inactive, or in pending status. You get a view of if the node is routing, forwarding transactions. Then LND gives a different has a beautiful API which gives you a view of daily fees collected, weekly fees collected, monthly fees collected. So just giving you a view of that if the node is active and forwarding transactions. So how much fees you have been collecting. It also gives you a view of your channel balance comparison, local vis-a-vis remote, so that you can actually see how balanced your channels are. And this is specifically very important for routing node operators, because ideally they want to be routing in both sides, right? They want to be routing both for incoming transactions, outgoing transactions. So they need the channels to be balanced, right? So that's an important parameter that you have on the top. And then a network view, which is giving you a decentralized view of how your, depending on the graph that your node has, what is the network view of that node's graph. And this is one API again, which LND has. So you get a view of that, kind of give you a bird's eye view of how your node is doing and how is the network. Specifically, a power user would want to know all this information.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think for me, I've used RTL quite a lot just to get a quick view on what is my current state of my channels. And even if you need to fund your LND node, then it has its own little on-chain wallet, which is distinct from, say, like a Bitcoin wallet, like standard one, because LND has its own little on-chain wallet, and this is that AEZ one, right? Like the special seed.
Yep.
And so then you can fund it that way, and then you can open the channel from your RTL node, or the other way is if you open channels from some other node in the direction of your own node, so that you have the like incoming capacity, obviously.
Right.
So I guess the main things that we're interested in as a Lightning node operator, and look, if you're listening to this today, you're probably a bit more of a power user, right? Because there are, well, let's see, on my RTL, my node sees 6,078 other nodes out there. So that's roughly how many there are today.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about what you would use that for. So let's say you see the balance and you see the channels. What are some good tips there that you would use? Like, what would you manage with it?
Yeah. So typically, right, if you're a routing node operator, I mean, again, so there are different personas, right? So depending on what persona you have, and we kind of went back. Now we'll actually maybe we'll get into the RTL or what's coming in RTL, from a improvement perspective. So then I can talk more about the direction that we are taking. But given the current persona, right, which is the routing node operator persona, typically what you would do is one is discovery. Who do I need to connect with once you've started the node, right? So again, that functionality of discovery itself is not built into RTL because it's not there in LND per se. Although LND has an autopilot feature which allows you to, discover and connect with the nodes automatically. But what you can do is you can also go out on your own and figure out, okay, there are certain Lightning stores which are opening up or coming up with, or going to provide option for accepting Lightning payments. So let me open a channel to them. So one is, you find out, okay, these are good nodes to connect to on the network. You get their node public key information, you connect your node to them. So RTL kind of has this peer view. You can go to the peer view, put in the peer ID, the public key, connect to them. So the moment you connect with those nodes, RTL, you have a control on RTL, which will allow you to open the channel with that peer. So that you don't have to again go to the second page and discover where that peer went. So you can click on the control on the grid, and same peer information is populated in the next page, and you can fund whatever amount you want to provide on the channel and open the channel with that peer. So that is one thing, connecting with the peers, opening a channel to them. Second thing, once you have your channels open, you can influence the fees that you want to collect when you're forwarding the payments, right? So, and there are multiple factors that you can influence when you are adjusting the fees. You can adjust the base amount, and you can adjust the percentage that you want to collect per the transaction amount. So there is an edit button on the channel management page. You can adjust the fees per channel, depending on whatever you think is a good amount to charge for routing the fee. And you can also apply the same policy for all your channels at once. So you need not manage per channel tweaking. You can make sure that all of your channels are kind of following the same policy also. So these are some of the controls available to connect with the peers and manage fee policies, so that you collect optimal fee on the routing that you're or the routing traffic that is going through your node.
That's great. So, as an example, you might know about a submarine swap service, or you might know about a popular store, let's say the Blockstream store, and you might think, okay, people will want to pay in the direction of that store. And so it's advantageous for me, the Lightning node operator, to open a channel in the direction of that store or that service. And then theoretically, that means people will want to route money through you. And so then as part of that, you will amend the fee on your channels to try to account for your cost as well, because obviously you're paying a chain fee, there is some risk associated, etc.
Yeah.
And so then rather than leaving your channel fees as the default at whatever it is, like 1 milli MSAT per million or whatever that number is, you can adjust that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully over time that those numbers start to reflect real liquidity and real costs as the network grows up, so to speak.
Yeah. So typically, if a big operator is, or an e-commerce player is going to open up abilities to accept Lightning payment, they would want liquidity providers to connect with them, right? But what they would encourage is people opening big channels, fat channels, right? To them, so that they don't have to manage a lot of channels, because each channel management also adds overhead, right? Now, so if you're a professional routing node operator, you can commit big funds or chunks to those e-commerce operators. Then what you can do is you can say that, okay, I've got channels with these e-commerce operators. Now you can open small channels to my node, right? I will so that you can route the payments through me. So for instance, if Amazon starts accepting Lightning, let's say, right, it will not allow you to open small amount of channels to them, right? I would not like I would guess that they would not allow this. So it will allow people to open big channels only. Now, so if you're a professional operator, you can open big channels, and then people can open small amount of channels, small quantity channels rather, with you. So then you become that routing hub through which the traffic can flow. And that's kind of, so yeah, that is the whole play, that just opening channels on the one side is not going to help. You need people coming into you, which you can forward the payments to the e-commerce operator.
Great. And also, hopefully, recently Bitfinex came out with Lightning as well. So that's another example of a person who you might want to open a channel in that direction, and then other people, same way, would want to open a channel with you, and then they can transact with Bitfinex.
Yeah. So Bitfinex, for instance, had a capacity of or a minimum amount of 4 million sats, right? Or YALS, for instance, says that open a channel minimum 5 million sats. Don't open less than that. If you're an operator, routing node operator, you can open, but then you can keep your incoming capacity as or limit as less, so that people can open small quantity channels with you. Then you become that hub for routing.
And let's talk about fees then. So can you tell us a little bit about the fee reports?
Yeah, so at this time, fee reporting is pretty basic in RTL. So there are two ways to see the fee reporting. One is on the dashboard itself. You see there's a simple API available from L&D, which gives you a breakup of daily, monthly, weekly, a fee that is getting collected. There is another view called forwarding history in RTL, where you can actually see your individual transactions, right? Whatever is going through your node. And for each transaction, what is the fee that you're collecting? So that is another view that you get. There's a third view called routing peers. Routing peers actually is not giving you a fee view, but it is actually giving you a summarized view, or a more of a analytical insight into what is the traffic for incoming nodes and what is the traffic to outgoing nodes. So you can actually clearly see where is the traffic coming from and where am I routing it to. So which are my active kind of network partners. And you can actually optimize your fee policy for those partners. And the partners which are not active, you can make the fee expensive maybe for them, because they are using your liquidity lesser. So there are multiple ways to play with it, but we are actually thinking of giving even more insightful interfaces for fee, specifically giving you a more fine-grained view of, or a timely trend of how your daily, monthly fee collection is actually changing over a period of time, so that you get more insights into how you're collecting fees, etc.
The routing peers view also shows the events. So it's showing events and then the amount, and then obviously the alias of that person. So for example, if you're connected with the Zap node or the Breeze node or the Open node, and then it shows you, say, for example, one event and 500,000 sats, and it's showing, okay, that's how much got routed through to that person. And then you can start playing off that and saying, okay, well, there've been, a lot of people want to route in this direction. Okay, exactly. Maybe it's a highly demanded route. Maybe I can start charging or whatever. Then it sort of starts, I guess that's where it starts to kick off in terms of Lightning Network. I mean, right now it's still early days, but it's...
You can open more channels, for instance, right? You can see that, your capacity is getting depleted, or there's enough traffic for me to sustain multiple channels for this node. So you can do that also.
Right, yeah.
Ways you can interpret that information and make it more useful.
And I think that is actually a point of difference between LND and C Lightning right now, because my understanding is with LND, you can do multiple channels with the same party, but I understand with C Lightning, you can only do one. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Right. With C Lightning, you can open only one channel.
Right. So I guess if you're a C Lightning user, you might need to close down the channel and reopen a fat one if you wanted to resize it.
Yes, that's right. That's one option.
Yeah. So let's talk about channel backups now. So I see there's a channel backup window, and this is for the LND SCB, known as static channel backups. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So static channel backup is actually a functionality which LND provided for taking backups of your channels, so that in case your node gets corrupted and does not boot up, there is a way for you to recover the funds which have been locked in the channels, right? So when you start up your node, LND actually creates a default backup file also in its directory. But given that they have provided a set of APIs, we also provided an interface where you can actually do channel level backup if you want, or you can do an all channel backup. Also, whenever you perform any channel activity, right? So, for instance, if you open new channels or if you close down existing channels, RTL automatically takes up a backup also, right? So RTL is kind of automating that all channel backup is always fresh whenever you are changing your channel states, right? Now you can also specify the path where your backup file will be stored in the rtl.conf file. So in the configuration file, you can store where you want to. You can configure where you want to store your backup file. So backup. So RTL will continue to take the backups wherever you are configured. The important thing is that you should create redundancy of the backup file. Store that backup file somewhere else, where away from the node also, which RTL there's no way at this point in RTL to manage. But at least make sure that you have a redundant copy of that file, so that in case you have to recover, you have that backup file that you can use to recover the balances which were logged in your channels.
Right. Yeah. For me, I periodically just pull a copy off of the device itself and keep it on another device. Right. So, for example, my MyNode one or my Nodl one, I keep those elsewhere just in case, obviously, something were to happen to it. Then I've still got at least the static channel backup for them. Yeah. And I understand there was also some people who unfortunately got caught out because they took a static channel backup while the channel was unconfirmed. Right. Yeah. Whereas I understand it's best to do it once the channel has confirmed. Yeah. As in, so I guess let me just walk that through just for listeners who are not as familiar. So when you open the channel with somebody, it's still pending open until that on-chain transaction has confirmed on the Bitcoin blockchain, right? So every Bitcoin Lightning channel open and close is itself a valid Bitcoin transaction, and you need to wait for that to confirm and then do the channel backup. Yeah, so with let's talk a little bit around channel management now. So I think we were touching on some of this before, but I think part of maybe what's a little bit harder right now is rebalancing your channels. So we have both what is known as a local balance and a remote balance. So again, just to make sure listeners can follow along, think of it like you've got an abacus and you have a certain number of beads on either side of that abacus. And I think generally speaking, most of the more professional routing node operators are trying to keep it roughly 50-50. Not exactly, but just something in that range. If it becomes too unbalanced, let's say you've got 90% of the beads on your side and only 10% on the other side, then that's not really great from a routing perspective. Now, there are, I guess, different approaches in terms of rebalancing. There is what's known as circular rebalancing, and there are certain scripts and so on. And then there's like the loop type services. Can you just outline some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, so first of all, why do we need to balance, right? I think we should touch upon that. So if your channels are, lopsided or in one direction, there's only the payments that can only come in that direction where you have the liquidity, right? It cannot go in the other direction, right? So that is kind of a fundamental, payment philosophy or payment, algorithm, basically, encoded in Lightning. Now, we need to, especially the routing node operators, ideally want to route in both the directions. That's why it is important for them to balance. They don't want to lose, because in each transaction that they're routing, they're making a little bit of fees or a revenue. So they want to maximize traffic, right? It does not matter which direction the traffic is in. What is important is that traffic is flowing, right? So that is why it is important to have a balanced channel strategy, so that you're always optimizing for maximum volume of traffic, right? So that is the reason why we want to do it. There are multiple ways to do it. One is self-routing, where you can actually give routing hints and route the transaction in such a way that payment comes back to you in the other direction by giving routing hints, right? That's one way to do it. But RTL at this point, we are actually we don't have any channel balancing strategy right now. We are actually looking to add loop in and loop out as the solutions for channel balancing. We are not really looking to add any scripts per se which do self routing, because one is not all of those scripts are they don't always 100% balance the channels, right? So it's very difficult to explain to the users how why the channels were not balanced, even if we have executed the script. So that's why we have decided to steer clear at this point, unless we have any stable, well tested scripts out there which can be included via JavaScript. That was another challenge. We have decided not to include those independent routing scripts for self balancing. Loop in, loop out are good, LND supported tools which can be used for channel balancing. And then depending on which side you want your liquidity, both the solutions are available for the users to make use of and balance their channels.
Yep. So I'll just point out here for listeners who want more detail, check out my recent episode with Alex Bosworth from Lightning Labs. We talk little bit about Loop. But Suheb, from your point of view, can you just talk through what are some of the typical uses there for a loop in or for a loop out?
Sure, definitely. So loop out. Let me start with loop out, right? So loop out is basically, let's say you're a merchant, right, and you are receiving a lot of volume of transactions, right? So which means that the channels might get lopsided on your direction. You'll get all your liquidity on your side. Now, while it's a good thing that you're getting so much traffic that all your balance has moved to the other side, but the problem that it creates is you cannot accept any more transactions until you have the balance moved to the other side, right? So how do we solve that problem? So loop out is one solution to that, where what you can do is so there will be two legs to complete a loop out transaction. You will make a lightning payment, which will shift the balance from your incoming side to your outgoing side. And in lieu of that payment that you did, you will get an equivalent on-chain balance, right? So whatever amount that you paid, there'll be a little bit of service fees deducted or swap fee deducted, and you'll get the equivalent amount on your on-chain balance. So you'll have your challenge balanced, and you'll get an equivalent on-chain balance. So you'll be able to kind of withdraw the funds to your on-chain wallet and get your channels balanced. So to explain that, there are two steps. One is you pay a Lightning invoice, and you get on-chain output to your wallet.
Awesome. And now the other way around, loop in.
Yeah, so loop in is basically, you want to get the balance on your side so that you can make the payment, right? Without having to close the channel and open a new channel, right? So what you will need to do is you'll make a on-chain payment, and in lieu, you will get an invoice paid so that you get the balance on whatever on-chain payment you made minus the service fee, and you get the invoice paid so that you get the balance on your side. So both loop in and loop out have two legs. One is the on-chain leg, and another is the off-chain leg. And so yeah, that's in loop in. You're making a on-chain payment and getting a Lightning payment back.
And so let's talk a little bit about the fees associated for that. So typically there are different services. I know Alex Bosworth has submarineswaps.org, and Lightning Labs will do that as a service as well. How do you think about using that in terms of the comparison of doing that versus closing down a channel and opening a new one?
Yeah, so in terms of the cost, I think it is definitely much more efficient to do a loop transaction where you are paying a little bit of swap fee, but closing and opening new channels will definitely be expensive than executing a loop transaction. So typically in the loop transaction, you have a on-chain fee component and you have a routing fee component. And overall, if you look at the total cost, compared to opening and closing a channel, doing a loop transaction is magnitude order of magnitude more or less expensive.
That's great. And in terms of other liquidity providers. So I know on the network there is LN Big, for example, and you can go to that LN Big website and you can actually request an incoming channel, or you can. Another one is Bitrefill's Thor channels, where they do that as a service. So how do you think about using those? Is that something the routing node operator might think about, or perhaps this is more relevant for a merchant?
Yeah, it's more of a, that's right. What you rightly pointed out, that that's a tool for merchants, right? If you're setting up your shop to accept Lightning payments, how do you get inbound liquidity? That's your first problem, right? I need liquidity to be able to accept payments, or to be able to receive payments rather. So these players solve that problem, and I foresee a lot of players, as Lightning gains more prominence, Bitcoin overall gains more prominence, more adoption. I see more and more players kind of getting into that space of providing liquidity for merchants. Loop in, loop out, or rather, loop out provides a non-custodial way to gain the same type of capacity, but the professional node operators, like Bitrefill, for instance, offer more reliability, in the channels, by providing services like Tor. So, and that's actually I believe that's a segment which will develop as Bitcoin and Lightning adoption increases overall. So I think it makes sense to have this type of service in the market.
So I think then there are two main profiles that you're building for and that are mostly relevant for people using Lightning today, and that's basically node operators, and then secondly, it's merchants. And so typically for those merchants, I guess it'd be good to just talk through from their point of view. They may not necessarily be very Bitcoin and Lightning savvy. They may be more like somebody who just wants to set up and take Lightning payments, but maybe they want to self-manage, right? So maybe they buy a nodle, or they pay and get a VPS hosted BTC Pay server,
Exactly.
and they're taking payments with that. And I guess typically speaking, the typical things they want to know is how much balance have they got? Can they receive a payment? Have they got the liquidity for that? And then can they withdraw the money to a safer place? Take it on chain or even to fiat if they can. And typically they might not want to close the channels to get the money out. And I guess we've touched on some of those. But would you say that's basically a good summary of the typical merchant pathways or things that they want to achieve?
Yes. So, once we initially started out with having only a routing node operator persona in mind, but with the BTCPA server integration, the another persona which became relevant for us was merchant node operator. I don't know if actually calling a merchant node operator really is the right term, but merchants operating Lightning nodes rather to accept Lightning payments. Now, their needs are different, right? So merchants are typically, you would not expect merchants to be very Lightning or Bitcoin savvy. So what information we need to provide for that persona, so that when they log into RTL, they don't see things like routing fee or channel balance channel, right? What does that mean? Right? So these kind of things, or even a network graph, right? They are not interested to look at network graph, right? What does that mean to them? So basically we have to create a different type of view, or at least a dashboard should have a different view of information for them, right? Which is relevant for them. And when I was kind of researching this persona a little bit, and shout out to Pablo Next for giving us a lot of input on that from BTCPA server. So, and BTCPA server folks kind of deal with merchant node operators, day in, day out. So they have the best insights of what kind of typical information they would want to see. And it kind of breaks down into very simple things. One is how much they can receive, and how much they can send out. What is their Lightning balance? What is their on-chain balance, right? How can they generate invoice? How can they make payments? It's as simple as that. So we have taken those elements, and in our new RTL design, which we are currently working on, we are going to create that merchant focused persona, and the dashboard will have a different view than what you have currently in RTL, and it will give them a view of what are their incoming channels, what are their outgoing channels, right? Keep them separate. Give them a separate view. Don't mix them so that it becomes confusing for them, and make it very clear to them how much they can receive, what can be the maximum amount they can receive, how much they can send out, what is the maximum amount they can send out. And then once we have created those views, we can add additional features like loop out, right? If they are lacking liquidity in certain channels, we can give them controls like loop out, so they can do channel specific operations. So that gives a very merchant focused dashboard and control, which makes it specifically easier for them to do their operations from Lightning.
Yeah, it still can be a little tricky in these early days because sometimes there might be a merchant who just starts up, and maybe if they're more well known on Bitcoin Twitter, there'll be all these people yelling at them saying, "Yeah, take Lightning," and it's sort of like, well, it's not that simple yet. Like, yeah, it's easy for you to, like, if you're an individual to send Lightning, yeah, that's easy. But like when you're a merchant and you've got to set up to take the channels, it's not a simple task. It takes a bit of work, and there's a lot of management involved with that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. There's a lot of education involved, and it becomes a challenge for onboarding perspective, right? I open up a dashboard, all this information. I don't know, what does all mean? Who do I go and talk to? And especially in a decentralized application, there's no owner, there's no marketing department, there's no education department, right? Everybody is in charge of their own knowledge and understanding, and operation. It becomes overwhelming, right? Is how to put it mildly. But basically, yeah. So that is the objective. That is the problem, rather, and the objective is to kind of give them as simple a tool as possible, make it as intuitive as possible, so that they can have their own control and learn it easily. And that's another thing that we actually got as a feedback, that people expect tools like RTL to be also educative, right, and not just operative. When I'm clicking on certain things, I want to understand what these actions mean. What does channel balance mean? So that's what we are trying to kind of those that type of feedback we are trying to build into the new UX design, so that it becomes descriptive, educative as well, and not just stay as a technical tool.
Yep. And RTL, as we've mentioned through this conversation, has been packaged in with a lot of different software and hardware. What has been your view and experience with having RTL packaged in?
Yeah, that was a great experience, first of all, right? So when we started out the collaboration, we initially started out with Raspberry Blitz. That was the first collaboration. And most of these projects are also kind of were starting at the same time as we were starting. So that was actually a good thing for us as well, right? They were also kind of hunting for UI solutions, because when you are packaging a plug and play node, you can give them all the hardware and everything together, but if you don't have a good UI solution, it kind of is kind of half baked only, right? It becomes very difficult to educate the user about, okay, you've got your node ready, now go to this L&D side, and there are 20 APIs, learn them first. Right? So that becomes a very difficult, from a user onboarding perspective. So if you have a good UI solution, which is even if it is basic, but it gives you an interface to start operating, that's a good, leg up for any node operator. Or rather, a node solution provider. So Raspberry Blitz was the first. And interesting thing is, each node solution provider we collaborated with, there were requirements, there were insights, there were requests which came, which helped us make RTL a better solution, right? So when we started operated, or rather, worked with Raspberry Blitz, Rootzall came up with the requirement that you should provide an authentication mechanism. So we added the authentication mechanism. When we started working with Nodal, Ketominer is always full of ideas, right? He is really talented and full of ideas. So he said that, okay, why don't you have a solution to handle multiple nodes through one UI? So we added that functionality. With BTC Pay Server, we had to Dockerize the solution, right? So whatever integration, whatever collaboration we did, we ended up handling their requirements, making the RTL solution all the more richer. And of course, it's been a learning experience working through all these talented people in the space. It was really rewarding and enriching experience also.
That's great. And on the topic of collaboration, there's a GitHub for RTL, there's a Telegram chat, there's obviously the Twitter presence. What's been your experience there? What are the main ways that RTL contributors collaborate?
Yeah, typically we get a lot of requests on Twitter also. Initially when we didn't set up the Telegram chat, I was getting a lot of DMs. People struggling with setups, etc. So I was kind of troubleshooting over Twitter's DMs, or rather, and then GitHub issues also. So a lot of feedback came in, a lot of new requests came in via GitHub also, which we were consistently handling, developing, improving RTL over a period of time. Uh, on Twitter, actually, we got a lot of boost from Pierre. Pierre is actually a good friend who helped us, spread the word, and that was really helpful for us to get the distribution. We are really we don't have a big presence. We have a small presence on Twitter, but Pierre kind of helped us, give an initial boost so that we reached out to a larger audience to, at least let them know about the solution. And the intention was also to contribute, make do our part in helping Bitcoin and Lightning's adoption improve. So whatever we could do, whatever skill sets we bring to the table, can we put that to a use and provide a solution which people can use. And my initial thought was that if we develop a tool like RTL, the idea was to enable full node solution provider, uh, and we who can kind of set up their business and package this UI together and have a business ready to sell nodes, for instance, right? That was the idea. And as more and more solution providers integrated RTL, we got a lot of feedback from them. And I kind of get a lot of feedback from Cato Miner, get a lot of feedback from Rootsall, Pierre, BTC Pay Server is very demanding. So, all this feedback kind of helps us make RTL a better tool.
Yeah. And RTL started mostly as an LND or LND only solution, and I understand recently you're looking now at C Lightning. Can you tell us a little bit with your interaction on that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we wanted. So given that initially, Lightning user have now some sort of an experience pattern on how to typically operate a node, right? So now you have a standardized kind of UI of RTL. So we were thinking that can we extend the same functionality on C Lightning also? Why just restrict to LND? Uh, the initial roadblock for us there was that C Lightning didn't have a good REST API interface, right? So that we could, integrate a web application with C Lightning. So that was a gap. I initially hunted for a solution where if somebody was working on a REST interface for C Lightning, I could reuse that, but I couldn't find a good, reliable solution for that. So what happened was we ended up writing our own REST interface to C Lightning, which was also a good learning experience for us. And then what we did was we kind of created a modularized version. So we created a separate REST interface and then integrate RTL on that interface. Now that interface can in standalone can be used by other apps also. So if you are a web app developer or a Lightning developer and you want to develop applications on top of C Lightning, you can use C Lightning REST as a solution to write web apps. So not just RTL, but any other web application can use that tool to write web apps on C Lightning. Yeah, but that was the experience. Now C Lightning is BTC Pay Server also provides an option of C Lightning to its users. So once BTC Pay Server integrates RTL C Lightning version, then their C Lightning operators also have this UI option available.
Yeah, that's really cool to see, and it's really a lot of things are improving very rapidly. So I guess my next question then is more about Lightning more generally. So especially in the early days, it was very much seen as reckless.
Yep.
Surely it's becoming less reckless over time, though still reckless right now. In your view, Suheb, when is Lightning no longer reckless?
That's a difficult question to answer, but what I would rather touch upon that then is that what are the different developments that I'm looking forward to, right? And as those developments mature, we can say that Lightning is becoming less and less reckless. Um, and there are actually a lot happening. There's a lot of happening in this space. Typically, you can say that, and I read it somewhere that Lightning is maturing in dog years, right? So it is like really maturing very fast, right? In 6 to 10 months, you see so many improvements, so much happening on the protocol. So it's evolving at a very rapid pace. So one area that I'm definitely interested is in AMP, or atomic multipath payments, which creates a packetized payment type, protocol improvement, and you can divvy up your large transactions, divide it into smaller payment packets, route it across different paths, and then bring it all together at the end. Improves privacy of the protocol, improves reliability of payments. That's definitely one area where I'm very interested to see, what's happening and how soon it can be brought to the protocol. Then Sphinx Send is another important area, right? Where you don't. So current experience is that if you want to accept payment, you have to generate an invoice. Somebody pays that invoice, and the kind of it's a little manual handoff process. Now, if with Sphinx Send you can make push payments possible, that's an amazing improvement, and it'll improve the usability of the protocol. Splicing is another improvement which I'm very interested in, which will actually help improve fungibility between off-chain and on-chain, funds. It will improve it will add ability for you to balance your channels without having to close existing channels. That will be another option for you to balance channels, basically. And so basically that's another area where I'm very interested to see what's going to happen. Trampoline payments is an improvement which is, I think, very critical for Lightning scaling. So if you look at the way Lightning nodes currently operate, it's each node is maintaining its own graph. It is building its own graph and maintaining its own network graph. So whenever I need to route payment, my node has a view of the network. It looks at that network view, creates a network path for the payment to go. Now, as the size of the network increases, that size of the graph that each node needs to hold increases. And so trampoline payment is one solution on how you can scale your routing capability without having to completely have a view of a complete network, right? So that's another area of improvement which is very interesting to look forward to, and it's an important scaling solution also for Lightning. Watchtowers is another area where I'm very keen to see improvements, and it will help address security risks and dishonest behavior, which is very critical for people to kind of have trust in Lightning's trustless solution. So these are some of the high level Lightning focus areas which I'm very keen on and kind of watching it closely. Once we have development on these areas, and once these areas considerably mature, then we can say that Lightning is maybe less reckless.
Very nice. Yeah, I think there's a lot coming there. So multi-part payment or AMP as well. I've got an episode coming very soon on that, so watch out for that one. With Sphinx Send, I think the Lightning guys are calling that Key Send now as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that one. There was a bit of chatter around that at the Lightning conference. And yeah, you mentioned a good one around splicing, and I think it's interesting as well to think about splicing versus looping out and in.
Yeah.
So you can think of, I was chatting with some of the guys, and they were saying splicing is sort of like a spot injection of more, more capital, whereas looping is more like changing the balance inside that channel. And so that's an interesting thing to think about from a node operator's perspective, where you have to think about, okay, do I actually want to resize this whole channel to be bigger, or do I want to instead vary the amount that's already in there and just keep that the same? And I think maybe another thing that might be interesting as well is reliability scoring and BOS scoring as well. So that's this idea of, the longer you've had that channel, are you a more reliable channel partner? Do you have good uptime? And then that also may influence who people set up a channel with and where they try to route through, because there's a better chance of the payment being successful if you've got good uptime. Whereas let's say some guy, he's like, his node is offline 50% of the time, you don't want to send the payment through him.
Yeah. So forward thinking a little bit, right? Routing node management is going to be a lot more automated than manual, right? And BOS scores, parameters like BOS scores help us move in that direction, right? So typically, if I'm operating a routing node, I'll not be, or if I'm a professional routing node operator, I'll not be operating one node, right? I'll be operating multiple nodes, for instance, right? And you cannot be looking at that node all the time to monitor all the parameters. What you need is some sort of a tracking mechanism, which provides you signals for manual intervention. You don't need to watch things all the time, right? So your channels are getting out of balance. So create a signal or alert for a user to come and take an action, or suggest even, go in further and suggest some actions that you can do, splice in, or you can do loop out, right? Whatever, right? So these are the options available. So then user can just take those financial decisions, make those financial decisions, rather than technically worrying about how do I do these operations, right? So that is the kind of a evolution that you will see in routing node operation. Routing node operation has to become much more automated than it is right now. We are just at this point picking up knowledge and information. All of this has to be encoded in algorithms, which will automate, all your routing node operations.
So I guess maybe just summarize your thinking in terms of what's coming next with RTL. What should people look out for next? I think particularly, as you mentioned, those two dashboard or those views that are coming for the merchant view and the routing node operator view.
Yeah, so basically at this point we are focusing on in completely enhanced or improving the UX. So initially, what you have at RTL right now is a product of a product manager and a developer working together, without providing or giving in a lot of UX thought. We just put our thoughts together, create a rough diagram, and started coding this application. So we created our minimum viable product. Now we've got reasonable traction with that product, and now we are kind of bringing in more of a UX discipline, where we are now agonizing over each and every small feature, thinking whether the user needs to see this information, whether these controls are meaningful here. So then we are kind of revising the complete UI. So you'll see a completely different user experience on RTL, and hopefully a better one. Where we have actually now we are collaborating with a person named Diogo Sergio, who is a UX expert and who wanted to collaborate with us on the UX side of things, and he is a UX expert. So we are that's one big area. So you will see hopefully that by the end of this year, a new release where we have a different persona based UX, where the dashboard will be different depending on the persona that the user has or the user chooses. And also the detail screen, the detail pages will have a different UX than what you have right now. So that's one thing that we are working on. Second thing after that will come is the loop in and loop out integration, where L&D is also very keen on having a UI solution in place. So that is something that will be coming after the UX improvement. Mm, After that, we want to actually focus on node monitoring, right? Like what I said about automation, is something that I'm very keen on. That whole routing node operation has to become more and more automated. So, what are the tools available? What type of functionality we can provide? What type of alerting mechanism we can provide, so that we can kind of move in that direction where the user needs to do less manual work and can get more alerts, so that they can take intelligent decisions.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing just came to my mind now. Mobile app. Have you thought about that, or is it more just like have the web user interface work on a mobile device?
So at this point, not an app per se, but yes, all the RTL interfaces will be responsive, so that if you're opening the same app in a mobile interface, it will adjust to the resolution and give you a more optimized user experience, not the same web experience, basically.
Great. That's awesome. Look, I think they're the main points I had to ask from you. Maybe just tell the listeners where they can keep up and follow you online.
Sure. So there are two ways. One is you can find me on Twitter. My handle is at Suheb underscore underscore, two underscores. And then if you want to follow just the RTL developments, you can follow us at RTL underscore APP. So that's another handle which you can use to find out any developments related to RTL. Happy to answer any questions.
That's awesome. And look, yeah, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. And yeah, it's really exciting to see all the stuff that you're doing. I like using RTL myself. So it's a great pleasure to chat with you. Thanks for joining me.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sivan. Thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
So there you go, some tips on how to manage your Lightning node with RTL. So make sure you check that out, and make sure you share this episode with any of your friends who are interested to run their own Lightning node. You can find the show notes and the transcript on my website, stefanlivera.com. This is episode 135. That's it from me. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the Citadels.